Hello, class. My name is Sarah Kadoof, and tonight I will be sharing a little presentation with you on initiatives and referendums. So let me go ahead and share my screen and we will get started here. All right, so we will be looking at initiatives and referendums in Arizona. We will be looking at initiatives, referendums. We'll be comparing and contrasting the two, and then looking at direct democracy. First up for initiatives. So what is an initiative? It is a process that allows citizens to get a proposal on a ballot, right? So that is the basic of the definition. Um, it is a process that allows citizens to propose new laws or amendments to the Arizona Constitution by collecting a required number of petition signatures. If the initiative meets all requirements, it is placed on the ballot for public vote. Now, with initiatives, you have two types. You have statutory initiatives and you have constitutional initiatives. Statutory initiatives require a certain percentage. It is 10% of the votes cast in the last governor election, whereas constitutional initiatives require a 15% of signatures for voters that voted in the last governor election. So how do initiatives work? So let's take a look. First step is proposal. Okay, so what citizens do is they draft a proposed law or constitutional amendment. If that draft of the proposal is accepted, then they move into the next step, which is signature collection. So supporters must gather a required number of valid voter signatures. So that's where that statutory and constitutional initiative percentage of signatures comes. So statutory was 10% of 10% of the voters in the government election have to be signatures, and constitutional was 15%. Now, valid voter signatures means that they have to be a valid voter. When signing the petition, there are also rules to that so that the signature does not get thrown out. It has to be the exact address. It has to be the exact name that is on the ballot when you go to vote. Now, if the amount of signatures collected, they hit the required amount, then it will be put in for submission and verification. That is, election officials verify signatures are valid. So there are people that go through and they check those signatures because there are bound to be signatures that are not valid. They're not valid voters, or they don't match what is on the ballots that people get. Now, if there are enough signatures, they will move on to ballot placement. So that means that there's qualified amount of signatures. The initiative then goes on to the ballot, which is then open up to a public vote. Lastly, you get to the election. So now we're moving into the public vote. Voters then approve or reject the initiative during a public election. They're going to vote yes or no. If it is approved, it then becomes law. If it is rejected, it is booted and it does not become a law. All right, next up, we're looking at referendum. So what is a referendum? It is a process that allows citizens to vote to uphold or appeal existing legislation. A referendum is a process that allows citizens to approve or reject laws passed by the legislature that can be either mandatory for constitutional amendments or certain types of laws, or optional for ordinary laws. So how do referendums work? Now, very similar to how initiatives work, right? There are steps to a referendum. Now, with the petition filing, someone must file an application with the Arizona Secretary of State. The big part with this one is that there is a timeline, and it is 90 days from that law going into effect. You have 90 days to petition, gather enough signatures, and get everything turned in. Next up, you have signature collection. Supporters must gather a required number of valid voter signatures. So with the initiatives, you had that 10% and 15%. With a referendum, it is a 5%. So you need 5% of the signatures come from who voted in the governor election. Next up, after you have signature collection, it's going to be the same thing. Submission verification. They're going to go through, they're going to throw out any signatures that are either not valid, any signatures that don't match. And then at the end of that, they're going to have those verified valid signatures. If they're enough, if it hits that 5% or more, you are then going to move into it being placed on the ballot. So if qualified, that measure then goes onto the ballot for public vote. Again, that is going to be where people go in and they're going to vote yes or no. At the election, again, public vote, voters approve or reject the measure during public election. So this one, if approved, that law goes into effect. Let's see what else. Now, we're looking at comparing and contrasting. So we're looking at similarities and differences between initiatives and referendums. So similarities. Both do allow for direct democracy. All right. So with direct democracy, voters are getting the opportunity to make or reject laws. So this means that it's not just the government that gets to make the decisions. It's allowing for voters to hold that in their own hands. They have the opportunity to make or reject laws. Another similarity is that both require an application and a petition. So in order to get started, both require applications and petitions. Another similarity is that both require signature collection from registered Arizona voters. We talked about the valid signatures. You can't just have any random person come up and go, yeah, I'm going to sign this. If they do, it's going to get thrown out. It will not be a valid signature. Lastly, both require citizens to vote on legislation. So citizens just don't get to say, yes, I want this, or no, I don't want this. They have to vote. It gives an opportunity for the voters to come out to vote yes or no, and then whatever the majority chooses is what's going to happen. Now looking at the difference between the two. So an initiative creates a new law versus a referendum which challenges an existing law. Now, the amount of signatures needed, we talked about this in the previous slides, the amount of signatures needed for an initiative is far higher than a referendum. So with an initiative, we had two options. We have the statutory and the constitutional. So statutory requires a 10% of signatures for those that voted in the last governor election. Constitutional, it is a 15% of signatures from those voters in the last election. Looking at referendum, it is only a 5% amount for the amount of signatures needed that voted in the last governor election. Mind you, there was also a difference in timeline. So with an initiative, it does not have a strict deadline. Whereas a referendum is going to have to be filed, signatures are going to have to be gathered, and it's going to have to be turned in within 90 days of that law passing. So an initiative, no strict deadline. There's plenty of time to work and gather those signatures. A referendum, you're on a very strict, short timeline to get everything done. Now let's look at the pros and cons of initiatives. So the pros, we talked about direct democracy, right? It's giving voters the voice. So we obviously have laws that our legislators come up with. We vote for those laws, but when it comes to initiatives, it's the voters that get the voice. The voters are the ones that come out and they vote yes or no. They are the ultimate deciding factor on whether these initiatives go into play or not. Next up, you have government accountability. A pro about that is that when we have voters giving input, it holds those in charge accountable to the voter. And lastly, empowerment. It engages public voters and it promotes the, civil participation. Lastly, we're going to look at the cons. So one of the biggest cons is going to be it's simplifying complex issues. So oftentimes these laws that are going into place are complex or controversial. And the reason it simplifies those complex issues is because you are putting a strict yes or no. It's very black or white, yes or no. And if you say yes, then this is what happens. If you say no, this is what happens. Although these issues sometimes might be complex, you're putting it into simplified yes or no. Lastly, going through and having an initiative, it's very expensive from start to finish. You are looking at the cost of gathering signatures and campaigning. That is very, very expensive. It is not something that just is cheap, done overnight. It takes a lot of time and money to put into it. Next up, we have the pros and cons of referendums. So very similar to initiatives, you have a pro, which is direct democracy. So again, you're giving that voice to your voters. Your voters are the ones that are getting the ultimate decision making. You are also holding your government accountable again. Voters are the ones that are saying, hey, this is what we want. This is what we don't want. You need to follow that. And then lastly, public awareness. Referendums bring awareness to the public because it's bringing these issues to light. It's making voters have to learn a little bit more before they go and just say yes or no. Again, for the cons, very similar to initiatives, you are, again, simplifying those complex issues. You're taking those complex issues and you're giving it a simple yes or no. Like initiatives, it is a very expensive process. Gathering signatures and campaigning is timely, it's expensive, and again, you're also doing it in such a short amount of time. So to gather those signatures much faster than you have to do with initiatives is going to be costly. And lastly, a con is the time. We talked about how with referendums, you only have 90 days to file and collect those signatures since before you can get everything turned in. So you have 90 days from start to finish. And lastly, we have direct democracy. So direct democracy, initiatives and referendums support the idea of direct democracy by giving power to the people to make or reject laws. This allows citizens the opportunity to be active participants in the legislative process, to hold government accountable, to propose and enact laws, and to approve or reject laws. And that is all I have for you tonight. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.